What happens when a duchess walks onto a talk show expecting royal treatment, but instead gets the reality check of a lifetime? In just 37 seconds, one comment would turn a simple interview into the most explosive on-air meltdown in talk show history. This is the story of how Meghan Markle got kicked off Andy Cohen's show. The stage was set, the lights were bright, the audience was buzzing with anticipation. Andy Cohen, the beloved host known for his quick wit and fearless approach to celebrity interviews, sat across from Meghan Markle. She had agreed to come on the show to discuss her latest ventures, her life, and whatever else Andy wanted to dive into. But from the moment she walked onto that stage, something felt off. Andy greeted her warmly. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here. We're thrilled to have you." Meghan smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for having me," she said, settling into her chair with an air that suggested she was doing everyone a favor just by being there. Andy, ever the professional, started with some light questions. He asked about her recent projects, about her family, about her experiences. Standard talk show fare. But Meghan's answers were short, clipped, and delivered with a tone that made it clear she was not particularly interested in being there. "So, Meghan, you've been in the public eye for quite some time now. How do you handle all the attention?" Andy asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Meghan sighed, as if the question itself was beneath her. "Well, Andy, I think when you're someone like me, someone who has lived through what I've lived through, you develop a certain resilience. Not everyone can understand that." The audience shifted in their seats. There was something about the way she said it. The implication that she was somehow above everyone else in the room that didn't sit right. Andy, sensing the tension but trying to keep things light, pushed forward. "I think a lot of people can relate to dealing with public scrutiny. What advice would you give to someone going through something similar?" Meghan's expression hardened. "I don't think anyone is going through what I've been through, Andy. My situation is unique. The level of persecution I've faced is unlike anything most people could even imagine." Andy nodded slowly, his smile faltering just a bit. "I hear you. But don't you think there are others who have faced significant challenges too? People who might connect with your story?" And that's when things started to unravel. Meghan leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Are you seriously comparing my experience to just anyone's challenges? Do you have any idea what it's like to be me? To have the entire world watching your every move, judging you, attacking you?" The audience went quiet. Andy's face remained calm, but there was a flash of something in his eyes. He was not backing down. "Meghan, I think a lot of people deal with public judgment. Some even deal with it on a much larger scale. I'm just trying to have a conversation here." Meghan scoffed. Actually scoffed. On live television. "A conversation? This feels more like an interrogation. I came here thinking we could have an intelligent discussion, but clearly, you're not equipped for that." The audience gasped. You could feel the shock ripple through the room. Andy Cohen, a man who had interviewed thousands of celebrities, who had navigated countless difficult conversations with grace and humor, was being told he wasn't equipped to have a conversation by a guest on his own show. Andy took a deep breath. His professionalism was legendary, and he was trying to keep it together. "Meghan, I'm sorry if you feel that way. That's certainly not my intention. I'm just asking questions that I think the audience would want to know about." "The audience," Meghan said, glancing dismissively at the crowd, "doesn't understand the complexity of my position. They don't understand what it means to sacrifice everything for love, to give up your entire life, and then be villainized for it." Andy's jaw tightened. "I think the audience understands more than you might give them credit for. And I think a lot of people have made sacrifices in their lives." "Not like mine," Meghan shot back. "You sit here in your comfortable little studio, asking your comfortable little questions, and you think you know something about struggle? About real hardship? The air in the studio became thick with tension. Andy's eyebrows raised. This was crossing a line, and everyone knew it. Meghan, Andy said, his voice steady but firm, I've been nothing but respectful to you since you walked on this stage. I've given you a platform to share your story, but I'm not going to sit here and let you belittle me or this show. Meghan laughed. It was a cold, bitter laugh. Belittle you? Andy, you're belittling yourself by even trying to have this conversation with me. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've been through? I know exactly who you are, Andy replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. You're a guest on my show, and right now, you're being incredibly disrespectful. Disrespectful? Meghan's voice rose. I'll tell you what's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to invite someone of my stature onto your show, and then treat them like they're just another celebrity looking for attention. I'm not here to entertain your audience with gossip and drama. Andy leaned forward, his expression serious. Then why are you here, Meghan? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you came on this show with an agenda, and when the conversation didn't go exactly the way you wanted, you decided to attack me. Attack you? Meghan's voice dripped with condescension. Oh, please. You couldn't handle a real attack if it came your way. You're used to dealing with housewives and reality stars who will say anything for camera time. I'm not one of them. The audience was stunned. Some people looked angry. Others looked uncomfortable. But everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Andy stood up. The movement was sudden enough that it caught everyone off guard. He looked directly at Meghan, his face a mask of controlled anger. You know what, Meghan? You're right. I do work with a lot of different people on this show. Housewives, reality stars, actors, musicians, authors. And you know what they all have in common? They show up with respect. They understand that this is a conversation, not a lecture. They don't come here acting like they're better than everyone else in the room. Meghan stood up too, her face flushed. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I'm talking to someone who clearly thinks the rules don't apply to them, Andy said, his voice rising to match hers. Someone who came on my show, accepted the invitation, and then decided to spend the entire time insulting me, insulting the audience, and acting like being here is somehow beneath them. It is beneath me, Meghan shouted. The words echoed through the studio. This whole thing is beneath me. I should never have agreed to come here. I thought you were a serious interviewer, but you're just another tabloid host looking for clickbait. Andy's eyes flashed. If this is so beneath you, then why don't you leave? The studio went dead silent. It was the kind of silence that felt almost physical, pressing down on everyone in the room. Meghan stared at Andy, her mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Excuse me? She said, her voice dangerously quiet. You heard me, Andy said, not backing down an inch. If being here is such a terrible experience for you, if I'm such a terrible host, if this audience is so incapable of understanding your unique and special situation, then leave. The door's right there. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, anger, indignation, disbelief. You're kicking me off your show? I'm giving you the option to leave, since you clearly don't want to be here, Andy said. But yes, if you want to put it that way, I'm asking you to go. I've had enough. My audience has had enough. We invited you here in good faith, and you've done nothing but disrespect everyone in this room. This is unbelievable, Meghan said, her voice shaking with rage. Do you know what this is going to do to your reputation? Do you know what people are going to say when they find out you kicked me off your show? Andy crossed his arms. I'm willing to take that risk, because I know that anyone watching this right now can see exactly what happened here. They can see that I tried to have a respectful conversation, and you responded with insults and condescension. So yeah, I'm okay with how this looks. Meghan grabbed her purse from beside her chair. Her hands were shaking. "You're going to regret this, Andy. You have no idea what you've just done." "I think I do," Andy said calmly. "I've stood up for myself and my show. That's what I've done." Meghan turned to the audience, as if expecting them to come to her defense. But the audience just stared back at her. Some people were shaking their heads. Others looked angry. No one was on her side. "This is ridiculous," Meghan muttered. "Absolutely ridiculous." She started walking toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. But before she reached the door, she turned back one more time. "You know what your problem is, Andy," she said, pointing at him. "You can't handle someone who actually has substance. Someone who isn't going to play your little games and pretend like this is all fun and lighthearted. You want puppets, not real people." Andy didn't flinch. "What I want is a guest who can have a conversation without acting like they're royalty. But I guess that's too much to ask." The word royalty hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan's face turned red. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How absolutely dare you?" "I dare because this is my show," Andy said. "And on my show, everyone gets treated the same. I don't care what your title is or what family you married into. You come here, you treat people with respect, or you leave. Those are the rules." Meghan looked like she wanted to say more, but no words came out. She just stood there, trembling with anger, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed toward the exit. But she wasn't done yet. Oh no. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. "You're nothing, Andy Cohen," she shouted across the studio. "You're a nobody who got lucky with a talk show. In 5 years, no one will even remember your name. But me? I'll still be relevant. I'll still matter. You'll be forgotten." The audience booed. Actually booed. It was a sound that started small, but grew louder and louder until it filled the entire studio. Meghan's eyes widened as she realized that the crowd, the people she'd dismissed and looked down on throughout the entire interview, were now actively rooting against her. Andy just smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was strength in it too. "You know, Meghan, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do. But you're not going to find it by treating people the way you've treated everyone here tonight." Meghan didn't respond. She couldn't. The booing was too loud, and the reality of what had just happened was clearly starting to sink in. She pushed through the exit door and disappeared. For a moment, the studio remained in shocked silence. Then, slowly, the audience began to applaud. It started with one person, then two. Then suddenly the entire crowd was on their feet, giving Andy a standing ovation. Andy stood there, looking a bit overwhelmed by the response. He raised his hands, trying to calm the crowd down. Okay, he said, his voice tired but relieved. That was something. I want to apologize to all of you for how that went. That's not the kind of show we usually have here." "You were amazing," someone shouted from the audience. Others cheered in agreement. Andy smiled, this time more genuinely. "Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've learned that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. You have to draw a line. And tonight, that's what I had to do." The audience applauded again. One woman stood up and shouted, "We love you, Andy." Andy laughed, some of the tension finally leaving his shoulders. "I love you guys too, and I'm sorry you had to witness that. But hey, at least it was memorable, right?" The audience laughed, and slowly the atmosphere in the studio began to shift back to something resembling normal. But everyone knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a host stand up to a guest who thought she was untouchable. They had seen someone refuse to be bullied or intimidated, even by someone with fame and status. Andy walked back to his chair and sat down. running a hand through his hair. All right, well, we were supposed to have a full interview, but that clearly didn't work out. So let me just talk to you guys for a minute. The audience leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. You know, when we booked Meghan for this show, I was excited, Andy said. I thought it would be a great conversation. I thought we could talk about her experiences, her perspective on things, maybe even have some fun. But from the moment she sat down, it was clear that wasn't going to happen. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I don't know what she expected from tonight. Maybe she expected me to just agree with everything she said. Maybe she expected softball questions and endless praise. But that's not what this show is about. This show is about real conversations. It's about asking questions, even tough ones, and doing it with respect. The audience nodded, completely engaged with every word. And I tried, Andy continued. I really tried to make it work. I was respectful. I was professional. But there's only so much you can take before you have to say, enough is enough. And tonight, that's what I did. I said enough. Someone in the audience shouted, "You did the right thing." Others echoed the sentiment. Andy smiled gratefully. Thank you. That means a lot. Because honestly, in the moment, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting or if I was justified in asking her to leave. But when someone comes on your show and spends the entire time insulting you, insulting the audience, acting like they're better than everyone else, what are you supposed to do? Just sit there and take it? No, the audience shouted, in unison. Exactly, Andy said. You don't just sit there and take it. You stand up for yourself. You stand up for your show. You stand up for the people who support you. And that's what I did tonight. The energy in the room was electric now. What had started as a disaster had somehow transformed into a moment of triumph. The audience wasn't just supporting Andy. They were celebrating him. You know what the craziest part is? Andy said, leaning back in his chair. I actually feel bad for her. I do. Because she came here tonight, and she had an opportunity. She had a chance to connect with people, to show a different side of herself, to have a real, honest conversation. And instead, she chose to be defensive and hostile and condescending. She chose to push everyone away. And that's sad. That's really sad. The audience listened quietly, absorbing his words. But that was her choice, Andy continued. I gave her every opportunity to change the tone of that conversation. I tried to steer it in a positive direction multiple times, and every time she chose conflict over connection. She chose confrontation over conversation. So what happened tonight? That was on her, not on me, not on you, on her. The audience applauded again, this time with even more enthusiasm than before. Andy stood up once more, spreading his arms wide. You know what? Despite everything, I'm glad you were all here to see this. Because you witnessed something real. You witnessed what happens when someone thinks they're above accountability. You witnessed what happens when someone forgets that respect is a two-way street. And most importantly, you witnessed what it looks like to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. The applause was deafening now. People were cheering, whistling, shouting their support. Andy just stood there, taking it all in, looking genuinely moved by the response. All right, he said, wiping at his eyes with a laugh. You're going to make me cry here. Let's wrap this up. Tonight didn't go the way any of us expected. But you know what? Sometimes the unexpected moments are the ones we remember most. And I have a feeling we're all going to remember this for a very long time. The audience laughed and cheered. Thank you for being here, Andy said, his voice full of emotion. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for understanding what happened here tonight. And thank you for reminding me why I love doing this job. It's because of people like you. As the audience gave him one final standing ovation, Andy took a bow. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of this unprecedented show. What was supposed to be a standard celebrity interview had turned into something much bigger. It had become a statement about respect, about dignity, about not letting anyone, no matter who they are, make you feel small. Andy walked off the stage to thunderous applause, leaving behind a studio full of people who had just witnessed television history. They had seen a host refuse to be intimidated. They had seen someone stand up for themselves and their values, even in the face of aggression and entitlement. They had seen what it looks like when you draw a line and refuse to let anyone cross it. The lights dimmed. The audience began to file out, already pulling out their phones, eager to tell everyone they knew about what they had just seen. The crew members were buzzing with excitement, replaying the confrontation in their minds, still in disbelief that it had actually happened. And somewhere, Meghan Markle was probably still fuming, still convinced that she had been wronged, still unable to see that she had brought this entirely upon herself. But that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Andy Cohen had stood his ground. He had refused to let someone treat him with disrespect just because of their status or fame. He had shown that no matter who you are, if you come on someone's show and act entitled and hostile, there will be consequences. In those 37 seconds, when Meghan had first scoffed at Andy's question, she had set in motion a chain of events that would lead to her dramatic exit. She had made a choice, perhaps without even realizing it, that would define the entire evening. She had decided that she was above the conversation, above the host, above the audience, and that decision had cost her everything. The moral of the story was simple but powerful. Respect is earned, not demanded. Status doesn't give you the right to treat people poorly. And when you walk into someone's house, whether it's a literal house or a television studio, you follow their rules. You treat them with courtesy. You recognize that you are a guest, and you act accordingly. Meghan had forgotten all of that, or perhaps she had never learned it in the first place. Either way, she had paid the price. She had come onto Andy Cohen's show expecting to be treated like royalty, and had instead been shown the door. And the entire world had watched it happen. For Andy, this night would become a defining moment in his career. He would be remembered not just as a talk show host, but as someone who stood up for what was right. Someone who refused to compromise his values, even when faced with a high-profile guest who thought the rules didn't apply to them. Someone who showed that true strength comes not from titles or status, but from knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. The cameras finally stopped rolling. The studio lights went dark, but the impact of what had happened would continue to reverberate long after everyone had gone home. This was the night that Andy Cohen kicked Meghan Markle off his show. This was the night that a duchess learned that even royal connections can't protect you from the consequences of your own behavior. This was the night that proved, once and for all, that respect matters more than reputation, and character matters more than celebrity. And it all started with one comment, one scoff, one moment of condescension that spiraled into the most dramatic exit in talk show history.